iPhones and mobile cinematography are quickly closing the gap from oddity to a professional tool. One of the last things that is holding the iPhone back is shallow depth of field. Let's try and remove that last barrier. So I've put together a list of all the ways I know to get the most shallow depth of field out of an iPhone. Now, to be blunt, to achieve the insane depth of field that you see here, we're going to need third-party solutions, but that doesn't mean that there aren't solutions that are already built into your phone that could potentially give you a little bit more. Some of it's workflow, some of it is thought process, some of it is getting a third-party app, but all of it is achievable for free. And we'll get to the third-party stuff real soon. There are only 3 things that are going to affect how shallow your depth of field will appear: your aperture, your focal length, and the proximity to your subject. Now, 2 out of the 3 items on this list we can't change at all. The aperture of the lens is what it is. We cannot stop down or open up. And outside of the ultra-wide, main, and telephoto lenses, we can't change the focal length at all. But what we can change is the proximity to our subject. So what are we going to do first? Well, we're going to jump into a third-party app. We're going to turn off stabilization. That is going to give us a 10% larger field of view than what we would have if we were shooting in UHD 16:9, the standard 24mm field of view with the iPhone. Now, if you're locked in, you may notice that I didn't say field of view affects depth of field at all. That's because it straight up doesn't. But because you have that wider field of view, perhaps you could take a half step in closer. This is the exact same thought process that occurs when people use larger format cameras. Because if you are using a 24mm on a Super 35 and then move over with the same 24mm onto a full frame, you're seeing more of what that 24mm is able to capture, and your frame will now be drastically different than had you stayed on that Super 35 24mm. So although the lens is doing the same, the actual composition is very different. So instinctively, you can walk your composition in a little bit closer than what you would do with the Super 35. Again, same lens, but because of the field of view differences, you're going to need to step closer to create an identical frame. Because you get a half step closer, that depth of field is going to be a little bit more present. Additionally, you can also do open gate. Now, this is going to really help if you're composing and getting yourself real close to the subject, expecting to maintain that 4:3 frame. It's actually pretty impressive to see how much of a difference these subtle movements closer to the lens and these reframes going from stabilization on all the way to open gate actually creates far more out of focus area than what I would expect looking at just a standard iPhone. To be clear, the difference between stabilization on, off, and open gate is far more subtle than anything you would get going from a Super 35 to a full frame sensor. You still have to set realistic expectations on how much depth of field you're going to be able to achieve from the iPhone sensor. So those strategies are really discussing composition, much less so about technical things. In that same vein, what we can do is set our focus manually. So you can jump in, turn it down to minimum, and with that, we can find compositions that we like with minimum focus, which is going to provide the most obvious shallow depth of field possible out of the cell phone. But that's also our next hurdle, because being able to get close enough to the subject to bring out that depth of field is going to be dependent on each lens system. Each lens system has a different minimum focus. The ultra-wide is actually a macro lens, so you're truly going to be able to get millimeters away from the subject, which is great. But because of how wide the focal length is, you're really not going to achieve shallow depth of field. The main 24mm lens actually has a pretty good minimum focus distance of just about 7.5 inches, whereas the telephoto on the 17 Pro is terrible, with its minimum focus coming in at an estimated 30 inches. Before switching over to third-party solutions, there is, of course, software options like cinematic mode. I would advise against cinematic mode if control or the ultimate quality of the image is important to you. And if you've stumbled onto this channel, you probably do care about the quality of the image you are trying to create with your cell phone. So what I would say is, yes, there's cinematic mode, but I would much prefer that if you were to use a software solution, you do it in post. That way you can control your image to the best of your ability. And then in post, what you can do is create like a magic mask or just a simple traditional mask and use lens blur or a simple blur to bring down the detail behind the subject. And that is going to create the illusion of shallow depth of field and can be pretty convincing, and convincing enough that Resolve has decided to add that feature into DaVinci Resolve 21. There's going to be a new depth of field simulator, which seems to be taking together a couple different tools like lens blur and the depth mat and blending them together into one unified way of creating shallow depth of field. And by the way, if you enjoyed the music for this episode or any music on my channel for about a year now, that is all audio. They just sent out an email reaffirming that all of their music is going to be human made, which is great because the human made music that they have on that platform slaps. They've really been able to set the whole vibe of my channel. So if you would love to set the vibe of your channel, there's a link down below and you can get 70% off for your first year. Now, to really get shallow depth of field is going to require a third-party solution. Now, I would advise getting a cage or a case that has the 17mm mounting thread. This is as close to a universal standard for third-party lenses that we have in the mobile filmmaking market. And then what you need is a telephoto converter. This one from Freewell, if you've liked any images that I've had on my YouTube channel the past year, you've most likely seen this lens. I truly use this lens constantly. I like a 24mm, but I do find it to be limiting in how close I want to get to subjects because it is still a pretty wide lens. This is a 1.7x telephoto converter, which is going to magnify the image and increase perceptual depth of field and also limit the field of view to something much more akin to a 40mm. And a 40mm is perfect. Almost any cinematographer will be using a 35, 40, 50, right in that range to do the vast majority of standard coverage. But what you're going to notice with using this Freewell 1.7x, that's also magnifying and extending the native minimum focus of the 24mm lens. So what was 7.5 inches has been magnified and increased. 1.7x telephoto is 1 foot 3 inches 3/8. Not the worst thing in the world, but it does mean that like we took one step forward, one step back, and how close we can get to our subject. So to mitigate that and ultimately improve it, now we need close-up diopters. I chose to go with the Polar Pro Shift series because they are built for professional use. They are like little magnifying glasses that are going to bring your minimum focus in with the understanding that you're not going to be able to achieve infinity anymore. So you can't rack your focus all the way out, but you're going to be able to rack it even closer. 10 inches, 3/16. Which is great because with a +2 combined with the 1.7x telephoto converter, and you're living in a really nice zone for pretty much any coverage. I mean, you can get some really beautiful extreme close-ups on your talent without the distortion of a 24mm, with more shallow depth of field present because of your proximity. It's like a 1-2 punch. Honestly, here's the ultimate stack for me. I have a Freewell cage, 17mm, 1.7x telephoto converter, then variable ND. That way I control my exposure with that, and then a +2 diopter. Woo! It's good. Also for my ProRes RAW shooters, this Osco ND200 has MagSafe built in and connects directly to your phone. It's also crazy fast at 2000 megabytes per second, but it does not require much power. And I'm very happy to say has joined Planck as one of the 2 SSDs I've tested that can shoot ProRes RAW with no external power needed at all. Now the +2 diopter is really great when shooting talent or mid-size objects. If you are shooting a smaller subject, or perhaps you want to get macro levels of detail, that's where +4 and +8 come into play. Now, like usual, I've pretty much talked about the main sensor camera this entire time. But one thing that actually really sings with this combination is the telephoto. Because the telephoto plus 1.7x on the iPhone 17 Pro becomes 170 millimeter. With a shift diopter with a +4, you're getting it pretty much at a foot minimum focus. With a +8, you're getting so close. All of this coverage that you're seeing of the Blackmagic micro panel was shot using that build. It's the 100 millimeter plus 1.7x plus a +8 shift diopter. Now, a little bit of a hack here is that the Polar Pro version is a professional set of diopters. But if you're just dabbling, I would recommend take a look at the Amazon $20 close-up filters. These are not the same ballpark. Truly, they're serving different clienteles. They also very kindly came pre-broken for me, so you get what you pay for. And if you're working professionally, I have no qualms bringing the Polar Pro shifts onto set. The Amazon close focus ones, yeah, maybe I'd be hesitant to do that. One thing that I'm sure you're already thinking is, wow, that's a lot of glass in front of glass in front of glass. And you'd be right to be concerned. Any imperfections in any of these lenses is going to be extended and highlighted to an extreme extent. Just look at this amount of chromatic aberration that is in all of these shots. This is just too many cooks to create shallow depth of field. However, I'm not too worried about it because A, you've been seeing it this entire time, and did you notice? If you did, comment down below and I will, I don't know, pet my dog. Now, of course, the Freewell 1.7x is only one of the many, many lenses that exist in this ecosystem. So see if there's one that works for you. The 1.7x telephoto, it's not the most extreme version of what you could get. In fact, if you're looking to maximize the elements of out of focus, the bokeh and shallow depth of field, you should actually look at even greater magnification levels. The higher the magnification, the shallower depth of field you're going to be able to achieve. In fact, a lot of these great images you've seen throughout this entire video were shot on the newer 2.5x. However, I chose to talk about the 1.7 because I've used it so much and I can attest to its build quality and image quality. This has been a stunning lens so far. I just simply have not used it for very long. If you enjoyed this, if you want to know more, please subscribe below. If you have any questions, please comment down below. I will be happy to answer anything I can. And if there's anything that I talked about that you think would be a great addition to your kit, there's affiliate links down below. But if not, that is absolutely fine. I just hope you enjoyed this and learned a little something. Please like, please subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye.